everyone, welcome back to Planet Dirt. My name is Alicia and we are doing fall seed starting today. So I have tried very unsuccessfully to direct sow a lot of my fall garden this year, and that's what I usually do, and I usually don't stress about it not working too much, but there was a intense heat wave, very intense, right after I started my fall stuff. So I started it maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, and there was like a lull. It was dipping down into the 80s, and I thought it would be fine. And then a couple of days after I planted everything, it shot right back up into the high 90s, low hundreds, and that's fine. You can still sow things when it gets that hot, but it does mean that you have to be out there constantly watering because these little baby seeds are so fragile. I did not do that. I am like a once every other day kind of a waterer. And so last year there was a whole debacle with pests in my garden. I got absolutely nothing out of my winter garden, my fall garden, and for those of you who are new, I am in zone 7A, so I don't really have the ability to grow things outdoors in the winter, but I do have a rather large greenhouse, and so I have tried unsuccessfully now. This is my third attempt. I've had the greenhouse 3 years. This is my third attempt at growing a fall/winter crop of brassicas. The first year, I got the timing wrong. I planted it too late, and by the time they were up and going in the spring, they got way too hot, way too fast. We don't have a very long spring here, and they all bolted. They all went to seed, and so I got absolutely goose egg out of it. The second year, last year, I planted it on time, and I was very excited. I did it correctly, and critters got into my greenhouse. I think they were voles because they were like burrowing. There were like little burrow tunnels. I'll put a link to the video in the description if you want to watch it and tell me if I'm wrong, because I never actually saw any of them. Right? But there were like these tracks all through my beds in there, and they chopped all of my carrots down to the nubs. They ate them all. They ate all of my beet tops, so those never had an opportunity to size up. And then they were starting to go after my cabbages, and I've literally never gotten ahead of cabbage, and the cabbage heads were just barely starting to form. They were like this big. They were just starting to get there, and they came and they started chomping them, and I had to rip everything up because I needed to put down wire mesh underneath the beds. So that was a very long explanation for why I am going to have a successful fall/winter crop this year, if it kills me. So I'm doing everything in my power to make sure this happens. So out of everything that I had planted in the greenhouse already, I have a few carrots that are still going strong. My parsley root is still going. A couple of my beets are still going, so I want to sow some more of those. And there are 2 cabbages that survived the little drought that we had. The thing about growing in a greenhouse is it's really great over the winter, but in the summer, it's very finicky. It dries out insanely fast because it gets so hot. So direct sowing, in hindsight, was probably a terrible idea to start with. So here we are today. We're going to go through all of my seeds really quick. We're going to pull out only the things that I know I want to grow over the winter in the greenhouse. Right now is the perfect time to be starting them because I get about an extra month of growing time for my summer crops out of having a greenhouse, which means I need to be seeding things right now that are able to go in the ground late October, early November, which That's 6 to 8 weeks from now, which means the timing is perfect. So let's start going through some seeds. I also grabbed some flowers because I don't really know what's in here. And if there's anything that's small that I can be growing flowers over winter, I've never tried, but you know, who knows? Who knows? It might happen. So I don't know that I have anything like that. Can you grow marigolds as long as it doesn't? Ooh, poppies. Ooh, ooh. Do these have to cold stratify? I don't remember. But I do remember that it got way too hot to grow these in the fall. In the spring, like I was trying to. It just gets really hot here. I don't know what I was thinking. But I might be able to try these for winter. So we'll keep those out just in case. I got some alyssum, got some bee balm. I don't know about that. I don't think I want to plant that in my greenhouse. Okay, poppies. Oh, and bells of Ireland. That was another one. It got way too hot. Okay, so let's try that. I also have some chamomile, but I have that growing outside, so I don't think I need it. Okay, that's good on the flowers. Let's go through. This is the lettuce. I have 2 trays here. I was only going to do one because I was only thinking brassicas, but realistically, I would rather have too many plants that I have nothing to do with than not enough. So I'm going to pull out some spinach. This is New Zealand spinach and Bloomsdale spinach and dinosaur kale. Want some dinosaur kale. I tried to grow this in the spring. Same thing. It just got too hot and it dried out really quickly. And this was one of the things I tried to grow last fall too. And I only remember that because I made a stupid mom joke about it. And then it died anyway. So I'm going to try that. There's some bok choy, which I really love bok choy. Romaine. Actually, I think romaine's a summer. Isn't romaine a summer lettuce? I don't know. And then there's just some, I should probably just grab one of the mixes and do a thing of that. Okay, that's probably good for now for lettuce. So the lettuce, I'm only going to do a couple of trays of because I don't like to put it directly in my garden beds in the greenhouse, but I do like, because there's overhead water and it just gets really dirty really fast, but I do like to put it in my green stalks, and these bush beans are about to come out of the green stalks, so I'll be able to put it in there. And then if it gets too cold for it too fast, I can just put one of the green stalks in the greenhouse. It's totally fine. Okay, so cover crops, more flowers. You know, I think I'm good on flowers. I don't think I'm going to do any more flowers. So, okay, next up we have, I apologize, I live right next to a road. So, if you can hear it, that's why. Cilantro. So, I'm not going to put this in the greenhouse, but I do have this lovely thing that I just posted a video about it a few days ago now, and this was indoors. It was one of those, I think it was a strawberry, like growing strawberries from seed. Side note, if you've ever grown strawberries from seed, it's a giant nightmare. I would not recommend it at all. It takes like 6-8 weeks for them to germinate, and then even then it's spotty. Just buy a plant and do the runners and propagate it that way. It's so much easier. But this thing, it had like the peat moss soil in it, and so I tried to grow herbs in it, and there was just no nutrition or anything in it. And so I took that out. I put in potting mix, and I think I'm just going to put some cilantro in that one and take this inside so that I have some herbs over the winter. What I did this year is I have a ton of peppers and a ton of tomatoes that I have been putting in freezer bags, and I'm not going to make all of them out of sauce or pickled peppers. I'm not going to process all of them so that I can keep making roasted salsa over the winter. So if I have fresh cilantro, that'll just make my life. I do want to get some parsley going, and that one's just easier for me to grow. And there's 3 different kinds of parsley in here for some reason. That one's just easier for me to start over the winter because, again, it just gets insanely hot here over the summer. It dries out really fast. And parsley is perennial here if I keep it in my greenhouse. It won't perennialize if I leave it outside. But when I had it in my greenhouse, I kept it in there. I kept it alive through 2 winters. And it's really nice because it just keeps coming back bushier and bushier. So I'm going to put some back in the greenhouse so that I have some perennial in there. I did the same sort of thing. I tried to do it with celery as well. And so when I pull out the sweet potatoes in the greenhouse, once the freeze hits, I'm going to pull out my sweet potatoes, and then where I have the sweet potatoes, right next to right next to my celery in there, I'm going to put the parsley, and that's going to be like the little perennial patch in the greenhouse. I don't generally have perennials in the greenhouse, but there are things that I can grow in there that become perennial because they're in a greenhouse, because they're in a covered space. And it's just protected enough. It doesn't get quite as cold in there, and they can handle the cold temperatures. So if I had them outside, if I had celery outside, if I had this parsley outside, they would not be perennial in my garden. It gets into the single digits here for a couple of weeks out of the year. That would kill it. Okay. Chard, yellow, orange, white, and red. I love chard. If you've never had chard before, you should grow it. I have heard people say that it gets bitter in the summer. That's not my experience at all. I throw it on a BLT. It subs into the lettuce really, really well. Collards too. Malabar spinach. I will not be growing Malabar spinach inside the greenhouse ever again. It reseeds so insanely fast. I just can't. It smothered out a bunch of my peppers. Some of my peppers never got off the ground this year because there was red Malabar spinach in there. Even after I turned over the beds earlier in the spring this year, it didn't matter. There was a ton. Who knew? Not me. I did not know. Okay. Brassicas. So, red acre cabbage. I'm going to be planting this one just because I heard that it will stay in the ground. So you have like more wiggle room in when you can harvest it. Golden acre cabbage. I'm going to try again. I also have a bunch of radishes in here. I don't think that you're supposed to start radishes in seed trays, right? Because they grow so quick. But the thing is, I've never successfully grown a radish. So maybe I'll just put them aside and I will start them like a week before. I don't know. Maybe when I'm pulling stuff out, I'll just direct seed them. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. If I'm not having any luck growing radishes, I probably shouldn't do the thing you're not supposed to do and start them in trays. Except for daikon radish. This one has a lot more days to maturity, so I think that one's probably a better contender for starting in a seed starting situation. Kohlrabi. I have never, again, successfully grown kohlrabi because the first time I tried and it was starting to get it was like 3 inches tall. It was not even a thing. Some kind of critter, a vole, a rat, a mouse, I don't know what it was, came in there and mowed it down. So, there it is. I'm not bitter about it, guys. I'm not bitter about it at all. I have The only two types, I need to order some. The only two types of cauliflower and broccoli I have are these. And I've had the seed forever. And it's Lotham 29 and Snowball. And that's pretty much the only information on it there is on the packet. So I don't know if I should just try and use the rest of the seed because I need to order more that I know what I'm getting myself into. I don't even know where I got those things. I think they got given to me like way back in the day. So who knows? I have some root veggies, and out of here, I already started the parsley root. I'm saving the carrots. I am going to save some room in there for carrots that I'm going to sow once I take out my tomatoes and stuff in there. So I'll save those for then. But I tried to direct sow a bunch of red beets. Literally one is still in there. One made it through. So I'm going to sow a few more of those. And onions. So I don't think anything's going to bulb, right? Although there have been several people saying that if you have short day onions, they will bulb if you plant them over the fall and the winter. I don't know about that. I've never tried it. But honestly, I really just want to grow some leeks and some bunching onions. That's what I have here. My bunching onions all got smothered out early by the ground cherry that I had growing in the greenhouse this year, and they never really bounced back. I think they were too stunted. So I'm going to get those going, and then I also want to grow some leeks this year. Leeks, again, I tried to grow in the spring. Where I had them, I think it got too hot and they dried out too fast. And y'all, I grew up in the Central Valley in California. I am not a native Nevadan, although I've been here for a couple decades now. When I was little, I remember having a garden and everything just grew. You didn't really have to try. Because it rains regularly where I grew up in Sacramento. It rained regularly. It never got that cold. And so as long as you planted it in the spring sometime, it would get hot enough to grow things like tomatoes and peppers. Corn was never an issue. But it didn't get hot enough in the spring, fast enough. It took a while to get really, really hot. It still got really hot in the middle of summer. Obviously, it's Sacramento. You were still dying in the middle of summer. But you could still grow broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower because you started them. You were able to start them outdoors in like February, and it wasn't an issue because it didn't freeze. But then I moved to Nevada, and it is hot and dry, and we don't get much rain. And so when I first moved here, I remember like having a really hard time growing things and being very frustrated, and I stopped gardening for like 2 years because I was just like, this climate just sucks and I can't grow anything. I eventually figured it out, right? Obviously. But that is just to say, I still consistently have failures, and there are some things you're just not going to change, and they are what they are. And so one of my sister-in-law was talking to me about gardening a couple months ago, and the only advice I gave her was start a ton of stuff, do a lot, and then something is bound to grow to the point where you get a harvest. Because even now, I have a ton of growing space, and there are several things that I get zero harvest out of and never work out. But there's a ton of stuff that I do get a harvest out of. And sometimes I just grow a ton of things, and I'll get, if everything went well, I would get so much harvest I didn't know what to do with. But guess what? Not everything's going to go well. So I planted probably 12 cucumber plants this year. Out of those 12 plants, 3 produced for me consistently. So I got enough cucumbers to eat some fresh, and I've gotten several jars of pickles out of them. But it's only because I grew 12 plants. If I was like, oh, I only need 3 plants because that's enough for me, I probably would have only gotten 1 plant's worth, and if that, and I wouldn't have hardly any pickles. So, moral of the story, overplant. You'll probably get enough to do something with. Alright, I'm going to start seeding. I'm going to make some labels, and I will catch you guys on the other side to show you what I did. Alrighty guys, here's what we ended up with. I got a bunch of beets. Here are the flowers, the spinach, the lettuces, and then up here is my kale, my parsley, chard, cabbages, leeks, onions, broccoli, cauliflower, and the kohlrabi. So with the broccoli and the cauliflower, there were a ton of seeds left in those packages. I don't know if you've ever bought cauliflower or broccoli seeds, but there's like 300 seeds in the pack. I've had those seeds for like 5 years, and I've never gotten them to successfully grow. So I just threw everything that was left into those trays, and we'll see what happens. See if I can't get it to happen this year. And if not, I'll just order a different variety that I know is going to have a better chance in my climate. So we are all done with starting seeds for the fall. I'm so excited. I'm going to go get these in the greenhouse. That's where they'll live for the next few weeks, but I just bottom water them, so I only have to water them every couple of days, and they soak up enough that it keeps them cool, and hopefully they'll start germinating soon. All right, thanks so much for coming along with me, and I hope I see you next time. Bye.